Welcome back to the deep dive. So we're diving into this really extraordinary stack of source material you've given us.
It's quite a collection.
Honestly, it feels less like a reading list and more like an intellectual roller coaster. It swings wildly from the really personal and frankly strange, like corporate threats over, sexual wellness jokes, all the way to high-stakes political intrigue and questions of spiritual integrity.
It's an immense collection, and our mission here, as your guides, is to sort of synthesize all this incredibly disparate material. We're going to filter it for you through, let's say, 3 core themes. First, the bizarre, vulnerable intersection of business motivation and personal health.
Okay.
Second, the mechanics of modern media success and the essential role of personal integrity in that. And finally, navigating this current climate of systemic compromise.
Right.
We're talking elite failure and, geopolitical uncertainty.
And to kick us off, let's start with a story that kind of encapsulates all 3.
Let's do it.
The story of a successful product that was launched purely out of spite, all following a corporate threat over a joke. It's the anti-corporate origin story you absolutely need to hear.
Okay, let's unpack this. Segment 1. We're looking at this highly profitable intersection of nicotine, personal wellness, and corporate feuds.
Let's do it. So it all starts with the founding of the ALP nicotine pouch brand. The owner was making media appearances, and on some other comedian's podcast, he makes this, lighthearted joke about Zen nicotine pouches.
Which are owned by Philip Morris International, PMI, a huge company.
A giant. And he suggests they're a boner cure. Just a joke.
And the reaction from PMI, according to the sources, it was immediate and really aggressive.
You'd think they could take a joke.
Apparently not. They sent a formal threat letter, basically scolding him for making what they call an unsubstantiated medical claim about their product. It's a perfect example of this humorless, hyper-corporate overreach.
Right. And his reaction wasn't to apologize or, back down. It was, I'm going to start a competing company.
Just like that.
That one single act of corporate spite is what launched ALP, and it was specifically positioned as the oral use only pouch.
And what's genuinely fascinating here is how the brand used that conflict. They did their research and found a really strange niche.
So this is the wild part.
Their market analysis showed that a significant portion of Zen's users weren't even using the product orally.
No.
They were using it rectally, seeking a different type of absorption.
It's a bizarre detail, but it speaks volumes about, I guess, consumer ingenuity when corporations limit things.
Exactly. So the ALP brand was basically built by just clearly stating its intended use. It was the nicotine pouch designed for the front, in contrast to whatever people were doing with the alternative.
It illustrates a central theme here, that modern brands can be born from reacting to some ridiculous overreach or exploiting a strange gap the big guys just didn't see.
Right. And speaking of raw personal experiences, the story then connects back to this deep personal vulnerability. The host shares this shockingly candid anecdote about his struggle with severe erectile dysfunction in his 20s.
Yeah, he describes it as just being too much in his head. This crippling performance anxiety.
And that detail is so essential because it grounds the whole story. It connects the, spite-driven origin of the product to a really raw, common human failing.
Mental insecurity becoming a physical limitation.
Exactly. I mean, so many listeners, regardless of gender, can relate to that feeling of your mind just sabotaging your body.
It gets much, much stranger, though.
Oh, it does.
So to cope with this, he recounts moving in with his 70-year-old friend's father, the guy he calls the wiener pill guy.
And why?
Purely so he could nibble off the man's prescription ED pills.
The specific details are they're unforgettable. It paints this picture of profound vulnerability. He describes waiting for the pills to work, which involved him serenading the older man and his girlfriend in the dark with Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven.
On an acoustic guitar.
On an acoustic guitar. It just captures the desperation and the sheer awkwardness of that situation.
That's the kind of detail that makes this memorable. But if you connect it back to the bigger theme, he calls the ED pills training wheels, not a cure.
Exactly. They didn't solve the deep anxiety. They just provided a temporary mechanical guarantee. It let him bypass the mental block and it took the pressure off.
Right, like scaffolding to build confidence.
That's a great way to put it. And it reframes this really bizarre story into a universal takeaway for you, the listener. Sometimes the tools you need for freedom are just temporary things that help you get over a psychological roadblock.
And that moment of radical honesty leads us perfectly into our next theme, integrity and truth-telling in the high-stakes world of new media.
So the sources note that even though he's now running one of the top 10 podcasts in America, he has this strict office rule, no compliments.
Which sounds strange.
Well, it's a defense mechanism. It's to combat what he calls soul rot and prevent the team from becoming, in his words, an ass. Success, in this view, is a direct threat to your integrity.
This deliberate way of managing success leads right into the discussion of how opponents operate. The claim is that when critics use these devastating attacks, calling people like him racist or anti-Semite,
right,
it's often not because they actually believe it. It's a calculated tactic. It's designed to provoke a very specific response.
It's basically psychological warfare being weaponized for control. If, as the source material says, evil feeds on hate, then the goal is to use these false, emotionally charged accusations to bait you into becoming the hater they claim you are.
And that justifies them trying to marginalize or control you.
Exactly.
So what's the countermeasure?
His philosophical defense is surprisingly simple, really. It's focusing on just two core actions.
The first is loving the people immediately around you.
And the second is just relentlessly telling the truth. And this provides, in his terms, spiritual power. This defensive mindset is directly linked to, well, to survival in this volatile world. The material brings up a really powerful quote from James Carville,
the political strategist.
Yeah, who says that survival in the face of rapid, unpredictable change doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the most flexible.
The analogy of the window pane versus the sail.
Exactly. The window pane is rigid, it's strong, but under unpredictable pressure, it just shatters.
But the sail is flexible. It adapts. It moves with the chaotic wind.
That flexibility, the ability to pivot and adapt without shattering your core principles, that is what the sources say is key to navigating this whole modern information climate and, maintaining your integrity.
Which is a seamless bridge to our next segment. The systemic failures and lack of integrity in America's elite institutions.
The shared feeling across all the threat materials is this deep-seated belief that the American system is largely illusory.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, the argument is that the big decisions aren't really made by elected leaders or governments, you can see. They're made by an unseen network of the world's richest people, which leaves the average person feeling totally powerless.
Like Marty McFly in Back to the Future, watching his purpose and future just disappearing in that fading photograph.
That's the feeling the source describes, but it pushes the critique even further with what they call the mediocrity thesis. And this is a really crucial nugget for anyone trying to understand modern power structures.
Okay, let's focus on that. The sources argue that many of the leaders running our biggest, most compromised institutions, news, journalism, Wall Street, are, quote, mediocre, unimpressive, dumb people.
And they name names, high-profile ones.
Right. Figures like journalist Barry Weiss or the hedge fund manager Bill Ackman are used as examples.
The sources contend that these individuals aren't uniquely creative or exceptionally smart, but they hold immense institutional power.
So why does that matter? The argument is startling. Their non-creative, mediocre presence at the top is a deliberate humiliation exercise.
It's put forward as proof that the system is fundamentally inverted.
Meaning what?
Meaning, in a healthy society, creativity and real intellect are rewarded. But the source material claims that in this rigged system, the opposite is true. Creativity is punished, and simple, unquestioning obedience to the status quo is what gets rewarded.
So the very visibility of these mediocre people is meant to demoralize everyone and prove the system is closed off.
That's the argument. And this inversion is seen most dramatically in the discussion around the death of Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, this is highly charged material, so we have to be really clear. We're reporting the specific claims from the sources impartially.
Absolutely. The sources make powerful, specific claims. First, the foundational claim is that Epstein was murdered in prison.
In a secure federal lockup in Manhattan, which suggests some kind of high-level compromise was required.
Right. Then there are these disturbing claims involving former Attorney General Bill Barr.
2 of them.
Yeah. First, the source material claims that Barr's father allegedly gave Epstein his first job years ago, so there's a link to his origins.
And the more sensational claim
is that Barr allegedly told his staff, "We need to make sure the country believes this was a suicide."
And according to the sources, this happened before any proper, unbiased investigation was even done.
Which raises huge questions about the rule of law. And on top of that, the sources point to the Bureau of Prisons refusing to release the names of the other inmates on that small, secure cell block. information that should normally be public.
The ultimate critique here is that withholding basic facts raises these profound, legitimate questions about who had the power to orchestrate not just the event, but the cover-up.
And it absolutely shakes public confidence in the whole concept of justice.
Okay, let's transition now into our fourth theme, moving from domestic systemic failure to complex and highly charged geopolitics. The sources were equally unsparing here.
And again, we must impartially relay the strong, often explosive opinions in this material. The sources make really strong claims about the Gaza conflict.
Yeah, the hosts in the source material view the events as a genocide.
They do, and they level these specific, aggressive criticisms against members of the Netanyahu cabinet for statements that Palestinians are subhuman.
They then pivot to the emotional reaction among American Christian leadership.
And the claim here is devastating. The sources say that American evangelical Christian pastors are acting as betrayers.
Why?
Because they vocally defend Israel's actions, even after.
Well, the sources cite details of Israeli strikes hitting 2 churches in Gaza. They named the Greek Orthodox Church of St. Porphyrius incident, where Christian children were reportedly killed.
So the accusation is that these pastors are valuing political alignment over the lives of fellow Christians.
That's the claim. And here is a key nugget for you, the learner, that really exposes modern information warfare. The sources detail a claim that the Israeli government hired an American conservative-aligned firm, Clock Tower X LLC,
For a lot of money.
for a substantial $6 million contract. And the contract's explicit purpose, according to the source material, was to create sophisticated pro-Israel messaging.
Specifically for Gen Z audiences. Right, and then integrate this content across conservative media platforms like the Salem Media Network properties.
So what you're describing is basically a highly targeted, covert, foreign-funded propaganda operation.
Distributed through media that a domestic audience trusts for, unbiased conservative analysis, it explains a lot about the polarization we're seeing.
And finally, the material turns to a domestic issue that embodies this whole erosion of trust. The investigation into the assassination of the podcast's guest's friend.
We have to contextualize this. The subject is the investigation into the murder of a close friend of conservative media figure Charlie Kirk.
And the sources raise these specific, pointed questions about the FBI's official conclusion that the killer acted alone.
They highlight multiple data points that, they argue, contradict that simple narrative. Specifically, the material cites evidence of foreknowledge posted on X or Twitter before the event happened.
Which suggests the perpetrator wasn't the sole actor.
Right. And more compellingly, the sources detail foreign involvement data points. Things like an Egyptian-registered aircraft reportedly following the victim's widow.
And the documented presence of foreign-registered cell phones at the event site.
So the conclusion drawn by the speakers in the source material is devastating. They're saying the FBI has consistently failed to provide a cohesive, honest, and complete explanation for the facts on the ground.
Which forces independent podcasters and citizens to fill that information vacuum themselves.
And then, ironically, they get labeled conspiracy theorists for doing it. It's a cycle of failure that leads people to conclude the systemic compromise is total.
So if we pull all these controversial and deeply personal threads together, what's the final conclusion from the sources?
It's that the core conflict facing us is simply good versus evil. And the solution, they argue, is that spiritual defense we talked about earlier.
Radically loving the people immediately around you.
And relentlessly telling the truth.
And then we are left with the most unusual, highly provocative claim as a sort of philosophical forecast for the future.
The one about blacks versus drones.
Right. This needs context. The theory is based on the unique origin story of African Americans in this country. This arc of systemic oppression, slavery, and an enduring heroic resilience against forces that try to dehumanize them.
Because of that specific history, the source argues, African Americans are uniquely positioned to become the heroes of the final conflict.
To defeat the emotionless, obedient drones owned by evil folks.
The very people who uphold that mediocre inverted system we discussed earlier, it is a unique and profound philosophical forecast about America's future heroes.
So our synthesis for you, the learner, across all of this, from the boner jokes to the geopolitical intrigue, is basically this. Don't let the systemic failures shock you, because the people running things are, by the source's reckoning, often fundamentally weak and stupid.
True freedom, they argue, comes from accepting that the illusion of safety and control is shattered. The key is adaptation and speed. As the source says, there is no safety, there's only destiny. The best way forward is to rely on genuine sincerity and the ability to pivot quickly.
So let's leave you with this final thought to mull over. If the people running our biggest institutions, from news networks to financial markets, are truly as mediocre and unimpressive as the source materials allege, what is the true function of these institutions in a modern rigged system?
Are they actually designed to create value? Or are they just mechanisms designed to penalize creativity and enforce obedience to the status quo? We encourage you to apply that sincerity filter to every leader and every story you encounter.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.